I'm calling the board meeting back into session, the public session. And usually we start with a pledge of allegiance, and I think we're gonna, there you go. Okay. You'll lead us.
You want to let me get you started? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I think there's several people in the boardroom with you who may need to be reminded about emergency evacuation procedures and no smoking, or they're well aware of what the rules are there.
And they have just heard you.
Okay. So now we go to the board consent agenda, where we have items C 1 through 3 that are presented for approval. Is there a motion for that? Melissa Aruda made the motion, and Lisa DeSantis seconded. Any questions or discussion? There being none, all in favor? I saw hands for everyone, so that's unanimously approved. We are not having public commentary because under the current situation, we are meeting remotely, and so therefore I don't need to go through the guide to board meetings. But Dr. Gianni, we're now up to you for the superintendent's report, which is in section E.
Okay.
Before, are we still allowing community members to submit questions?
I think that they did. I don't know if we got any.
No, I haven't put a letter out to that effect, but yes, we would take any, and I would bring them and address them here. And we haven't had any since that last. Pardon?
Who should they contact if they have a question?
It would go to the clerk.
Okay.
Just as before, they'd email the clerk.
And the email address for the clerk is on our website. Okay, Dr. Gianni, we're back to you on section E.
Yes. Thank you, President Hayes. I'd like to use this opportunity to just update the board with regard to the school closure matters, as I have had done in the past. Distant learning, as you know, is up and running. It's been up and running since March 13th, with students and their parents accessing instructional material remotely through our website and our continuity of learning plan. Monday, the April 13th, teachers began introducing new material to students using Google Classroom and a variety of other technologies. We are, of course, concerned at this point with regard to families that do not have devices or internet access, as making the connection to these families is difficult remotely. Altice, as you know, is providing free internet access to families in need. The district is providing devices to families without a device. We have distributed some 677 devices so far. Our teachers are identifying unconnected families as they deliver new instruction, and we are putting notices, actually just began yesterday, putting notices regarding the Altice offer, as well as the district providing devices in our grab-and-go meals in an attempt to try to reach out to those folks. And then we are going to be reaching out to these families by phone to inform them of the Altice offer, as well as the availability of the devices. We anticipate those means of doing that will help us get to those folks that are not connected via internet at this point. In terms of meals, we continue to distribute meals to any student in the district, as well as their siblings under the age of 18, even if they are not in school. Our grab and go, it continues at the high school, Frank P. Long and Vern Kritz Elementary School, and through our home delivery. Friday was a record high with 4,054 meals distributed. And that's breakfast and lunch, and so the board does know on Friday, distributions include meals for Saturday and Sunday. I know that might have been a question in the past. Childcare, I have reported to the board and also written to the community that I'm happy to report we have arranged for childcare for free with regard to those folks that are in the healthcare providing profession or are emergency providers. Scope Educational Services is providing that service for us, and they have some 15 locations throughout the Suffolk County where folks can register. That information is on our website, and it's a pretty easy registration process. So those are my updates with regard to our closure, and I'll entertain any questions the board might have.
I had a couple of questions.
Okay.
It's my understanding that the library in Belport is looking into expanding their Wi-Fi coverage. Jack, maybe you know about it, into the parking lot so that people could go into the parking lot if they wanted to be outside and have access to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we're actually having a meeting via Zoom tomorrow, and I can forward any information on that to the board afterwards.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
So Patrick did bring that up in our network meeting, Ann, as you know, and I did ask Dan, our tech expert, to look into it. And it is a possibility here in the district. I was thinking more in terms of a longer distance, but I'm told that extension is only about 300 feet. So it would only be to, say, one of our parking lots if we were to do it. There is a cost associated with it, and I think that's something, the board may want to consider, but you'd also have to consider people needing to get to the parking lot to be able to access it. We're also looking at a service with hotspots, and it's through Eastern Suffolk BOCES, and it's actually aidable. However, it's not available at this time. I think it's some 20 hotspots at a cost of $5,000, and is that a month or?
That's for a month for 20.
So 20 hotspots, $5,000 a month, and it is an aidable fee. So that's something we're exploring, but again, it's not accessible yet. They're talking about maybe a mid-May, something like that would be available.
Wouldn't we have a problem calling it aidable when we still are so much in the air about what the state budget is going to be paying us?
That is a good point.
Okay. For the child care, do you know how many families in our district have taken advantage of that?
No, I do know we had one inquiry. It just opened up. Was it this Tuesday or last Tuesday? I could check because I would need to get that from Scope themselves. But we can check and see how many may have enrolled.
And did I understand from what you said that the teachers will be in touch with the family of each student who has not been in contact with the teacher so far?
Teachers are recording who is being connected, and yes, they are trying to connect with families. However, that may not be the only way because we are also looking at utilizing other staff in the building to also reach out to families that are not connected in regard to getting connected or how we may be able to support them.
I think working with the families directly through Altice would probably be the best remedy here. You know, having people go to a parking lot is, you know, unless it's a beautiful day and they really want to be outside, that's not a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think Patrick had mentioned in the network meeting the concern of social distancing in the parking lot, right? And then there's maybe another thing that you're worrying about.
Right, and we would have no control over that at all, but I'm just thinking that if a district employee or teacher is working with the family and can make the contact at Altice, perhaps helping with communication to make sure it gets through to the appropriate section of Altice so that they could be signed up for the program, that would be good.
Okay.
I have a question. Jen, do you know how many students don't have access?
No, I don't. We do know preliminary, at the high school, I'm told that 85% of the kids have been connected. But again, and now that we moved into new instruction and a more structured connection piece, where we feel we'll be able to get a better handle on who and who is not connected. And then we're going to make sure we reach out to those families.
Do you know how many Chromebooks have been given out?
700, Dr. Judy.
Yeah.
677.
677.
I was listening, Dr. Gianni.
Thank you, Mrs. Hayes.
Presentation.
So if a student doesn't have access from home, they don't have Wi-Fi, is Altice the only option that the district is recommending a student?
Well, Altice is the first option, right? So we're also looking at purchasing hotspots. However, that is not available yet. And it is something that we'll have to consider and the board will have to consider because it is an expense to do.
I heard somewhere that AT&T, I think that's also a Wi-Fi provider, if I'm understanding correctly, that they may have something available, and I'm wondering if somebody in the district office could look into that as an alternative to Altice.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what.
Cablevision / Altice was the only Wi-Fi provider in Brookhaven town.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I know like Verizon, Fios isn't available. I'm pretty sure it's Cablevision only, which is now Altice.
Malone did put out something for free Wi-Fi from Spectrum with Comcast for students from K to 12 that qualify with low income for 60 days. I mean, at this point, it's only for 60 days, which I think Altice is the same exact thing. It's only 60 days, and I also believe that once you have that 60 days, then Altice is requiring you to go into contract or something along those lines. AT&T is running it, Verizon's running it with no additional charge until May 13th. SafeLink Wireless, that I'm not that familiar with. You have to fall within certain poverty guidelines for that particular one. So there's quite a few of them. Malone did put something out.
That's Suffolk County wide though.
Yeah, Brookhaven is only Cablevision.
Brookhaven has a exclusive contract.
Right, but you can see, well, Comcast, maybe not, Verizon.
You can't get Verizon here.
Yeah, it's a Brookhaven town thing. It's been going on for years. There's no other provider.
I'm reading through all the different things that they're posting to see if there's anything else that would be beneficial to us.
The frustration that I have, Dr. Johnny, is that I'm one of those families that don't have the Wi-Fi. So, what we were doing was using my personal hotspot so my cousins can go on their phone and do their work on the Google Classroom. So, what we did was we picked up a Chromebook, now we're using my hotspot for their Chromebook. But, my hotspot is, limited. And I'm wondering how many other students how many other families are in the same situation. And I don't want to rely on the mercy of Altice to give our students access to their education. I want to see it as providing school but no transportation. I feel like we have to do more to make sure that every student is able to receive the education that we are sending to them. I feel like we have to do more.
Well, students can still pick up packets if they need, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think they can still pick up packets.
Yeah, I mean, they can. I mean, we're at the mercy. It's not a problem we can solve to create, internet connectivity for everybody. Unfortunately, it's a shame, but that's, I mean, if they can't get Wi-Fi, right, we're making, right, Dr. Gianni, they can still pick up packets, right?
Yes, packets are available.
He's not learning new material, new algebra. How can you, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't make any sense. We're not at the mercy of anything because if we are, we're just saying, well, good luck, you're on your own. I think we need to do more. I think we are capable of doing more. I don't have the answers. If we don't have Wi-Fi, what do we do? Not learn? I don't understand.
I don't get where you're going with it. I mean, what are we gonna, I mean, if we're not an internet provider, we can't.
No, we're not. We're a school. And we're trying to educate students. And we're not getting there. They don't have access, is my point, Chris.
No, I get it, but I think I think the district's made materials available to be picked up in hard copy. That's the only other solution. I mean, if you're all ears, I agree with you. But if you have a solution of how we're gonna get internet to places.
I don't.
That's what I'm saying. But it's not a problem the district can solve. It's unfortunate. What are you gonna do?
I see Melissa, but I just wanted to break in right there for a second. I think that, Cameron, from your point of view, if they've got the hard copies and they do have contact with the teacher by telephone, it wouldn't be through the internet since they don't have it, but by phone, or I don't know if there's any other way to do it, at least they would have some contact with their instructor. Is that possible? Dr. Gianni?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why we made those teacher availability times, so the connections can be made. And again, listen, I agree. I wish internet and devices were in every household, and I think we're doing really the best we can. We're supporting and helping with Altice. We're looking at devices available with regard to hotspots. Unfortunately, they're not available yet. I don't know what more we can do. It wasn't a situation that the district has created, but I think we're doing a pretty good job in dealing with the situation that we're in the best we can. And as Mr. Pacini did say, for those that just can't get through to Altice, and until those devices are available, there are hard copy material available. And we're even delivering it if you don't have transportation. But we're working our hardest and our best to make sure everybody's connected.
So, you think it would really work for a student to learn the material just by hard copy?
Listen, I don't think this is ideal at all. I mean, the lack of face-to-face instruction is definitely going to be difficult. This is not ideal in any way, shape, or form. But, again, we didn't create the situation, and I think we're doing a really good job in addressing the situation. And I think our teachers are as well. Listen, I can't see how any child who struggles with math is going to be able to learn math from a packet and not be able to sit down with a teacher and go over a problem with them. I just don't see it happening. But there are other.
High school chemistry.
Chemistry, sure, where there's no labs, right? So
I mean, none of it's perfect. My son is really struggling with chemistry right now because there's no teacher interaction. But to answer your question, Cameron, the elementary stuff, I would like my kids to go to hard copy. It's easier. because because I don't have an in-house IT person, you know, some of the kinks that come up through what's digitally, for me, it's just easier to print it off and have them do work on pen and paper.
You need to get Melissa in here, because we put her on hold
It's
a
okay.
while ago.
To that note, when we're talking about not having access to the Wi-Fi and things along those natures, which is an issue. That it's an issue in many different areas. It's challenging. I agree with you. It's not ideal to have that type of packet, especially when we have students that are struggling with new instruction or even old instruction. With that being said, I also want to make sure that when we are doing this distance learning, that we're also really taking into account the emotional and the mental stability of the children. And that becomes part of what's happening. We understand that the academics are important. Maintaining an academic level, increasing new instruction is definitely important, but I think the emotional and mental portion of all of this needs to supersede the academics at this point. So to your point, Cameron, when you're talking about a child who is not connected because they cannot be connected, making sure that we have the individuals out there and that our teachers have the ability to connect with the children emotionally, mentally, trying to do a check-in. You know, we know that many new cases are coming in. There are children sitting at home with their parents have, you know, tested positive and things along those nature. So we need to kind of keep that in mind as well, because I think that needs to be top priority and academics secondary during these uncharted water times, without a shadow of a doubt. To the point of the internet issue, what I'm also finding is that a lot of the information that's being given out, and I understand it's a lot, but it's all coming out through email, which then takes a portion of our community that's not receiving the information. And I get robocalls are not necessarily always the easiest to do, but I do think at this time that we do need to start increasing the robocalls that go out so that we know that information is going out to our community. And if the dominant language at home is Spanish, that robocall needs to go home in Spanish. Because I think that there's quite a bit of our community that we're missing in all of this. And that we just kind of, you know, as we're starting to walk through this process, we don't know how long it's going to be. It could be another 2 weeks, it could be another 2 months. None of us in the room know how long it's going to be. I think we need to plan for 2 months though. I would rather overplan than underplan. I'd rather say we were more prepared than underprepared. So I think those types of things will also help to connect a little bit more with our community so that we know exactly what's going on within the home life, what we can do to help them.
Well, I think that goes also along with what Dr. Gianni said about staff members and teachers who will be reaching out to the students that currently are not in touch with them on the Chromebook Wi-Fi method. And so, you know, that way we do have the educational component there, but also the communication component that you're talking about. It's an opportunity to have human contact between the teacher or the staff member and the student.
Those with the Chromebooks, we don't know what's going on inside of their homes right now. You know, I can speak from personal experiences. I know many of my students that I'm connecting with, they're on the Chromebook and their parents have tested positive. And they are sitting there and they are trying to work through their work with their parents tested positive. To me, the emotional and the mental portion of it supersedes the academics. We do have check-ins and we are making sure that everything health-wise is okay within a household. So that's the portion of it that I just want to make sure that we are also looking into. Yes, the academics are important, but for child X, if both of your parents are quarantined in a bedroom and you're on your own, the last thing that I'm worrying about is your ELA assignment right now.
But you're in contact with them. Maybe you started out because you're the teacher and you're doing the education component, and and because you're having contact with them, you're getting more information about how they are, how their family is. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. But I mean,
So if our teachers are doing that as well,
right, but it cannot just be for the people that are not on the Chromebook, is what I'm saying. That's the point that I'm making. We need to, as teachers, each day I go in, I make a little chat with my students, and the same thing happens with the South Country teachers too. Just that little check-in, that little mental, have a little chat with all of the class. There needs to be that emotional and mental portion of it as a check-in. Without that key component, we cannot move forward academically. That's education 101. So I just want to make sure that that portion of it is there and that the information is going out in robocalls because, as Cameron's saying, we have a lot of families that are not receiving the internet and then therefore they're not receiving the email. So then they're missing out on information.
so Dr. Gianni, maybe you could check with our curriculum and instruction people and our board update for next week. Let us know how the communication between teachers and students is coming along, both the ones who are in contact on Chromebooks and the ones who aren't.
Yeah, that'll probably be not tomorrow, but at the end of next week, because we put some new things in place just starting Monday. And so we can get a better handle on who is and who is not connected.
Dr. Gianni, do we know, I mean, we should be able to know through Blackboard Connect how many students we do not have an email address for, correct?
Yeah, I don't know if those that aren't, I don't know if there's a report that would allow us to print those without. I can tell you that a great deal of emails go out, well over what we have in terms of families in the district. So there must be
Probably
several
multiple
in
per
there.
family, right?
Yeah. I could see if we could run a report with regard to those not.
Yeah, I think that's where we have to start, right? Because I get the point, right? And from there, and then I would think that the teachers, because I talk to a lot of teachers in other districts, the same thing, right? And they're responsible, and I'm sure our teachers are too, to report any students that aren't checking in or they haven't had contact with to make sure they have all the information to know what they're doing.
Listen, Google Classrooms, our teachers should be able to tell us who's connected or not, because it
Yeah.
logs when a student is in. We've taken it a step further in terms of administrators have created Google Classrooms. So the ninth grade AP at the high school created a Google Classroom for everyone in ninth grade. That's why I'm able to tell you 85% of our youngsters have checked in. Okay,
Same thing with the
that
junior
doesn't
class, 'cause I'm getting my
tell
son.
me who doesn't have the wherewithal, but it does tell me that they are able to check in. And those type of things, I think, are the way we find out whether or not they're connected. Same thing at the elementary school. The real problem will be our K-2 kids who we aren't connected with Google Classroom. Those where we are going to have to rely on our teachers and get a roster, so to speak, of those they were able to connect with. And then those that they aren't able to connect with are the ones we're going to have to do that additional work with. So I'm confident in grades 3 through 12, we will have a handle on who's checking in and who's not, simply by the use of Google Classroom. But we could certainly take a look at emails district-wide. I think that'll only help us with getting the message out, not necessarily making sure the kids are connecting to the teacher.
So when will you have that data for us, Dr. Gianni?
Well, I'm hoping it's going to start next week. So I'm hoping by Thursday I'll be able to share something more with you. I mean, I'm sure I'll be able to share something with you. It might not be as detailed as I would hope it to be, but it would be something.
To that note, I do need to, I have my children's Google Classroom on my phone, so I get the notifications, because this week has been, it's been a little bit of a crazy week, in terms of the academics and the new instruction, and I guess we kind of all knew that would start to happen. But I definitely need to commend the teachers because my phone, I get a notification every time something is either posted or graded or commented on. And I have to tell you that my phone goes off all day long from the South Country teachers from the Google Classroom. From 7 o'clock in the morning until 11:30 at night, that notification is going off, whether it's just a teacher posting something or grading and giving feedback or whatever the case is. So those that are using Google Classrooms, our teachers are doing a phenomenal job. They really are. You can see they're putting in 14, 15 hours a day because I'm getting those notifications on here and I'm getting personal notifications and I'm not the only parent that's getting it. So I really commend them on really going that extra mile, especially my children are older, so they are in the middle school, so our educators have a lot of students there. So I just wanted to share that piece of information. You can put Google Classrooms on your phone. For the parents out there, I know these are uncharted waters and it's difficult. It's difficult on the parents. Anybody who's sitting home and trying to work with their children on this is something that nobody had ever planned for. But you can download Google Classrooms onto your phone and you will get notifications when new assignments are in and it becomes a full-time job. It really does. So it's just something that could also help out some of the parents that do have the technology at home.
Okay, anything further on that?
Okay, then I think next do you have any more, anything else you need to report to us?
I do not.
Okay, then we can go to trustee and advisory committee reports.
Yeah, and I just
think
canceled
the
those,
advisory
huh?
committees are not meeting, so we don't have anything there, but if any trustee has something to report to the rest of us. I'm not seeing any hands. No? Okay. All right, so now we're going to go down to items for discussion. We have some presentations, don't we?
We do. We do. So we have two presentations for you this evening. Our first is our budget presentation number 5, and it is our staffing analysis. I don't know, are you all pulling it up on your own devices there? Because otherwise I gotta point this to the screen.
You can access it via board docs.
Yeah, you should be able to get it. And Ms. Aruda, we moved the documents into the public at 4:30, so they've been available, so the public can follow along as well, okay?
Okay.
All right, so I am going to go through the staffing presentation, and then when I'm finished, I'll address any questions that the board might have. And let's see. Okay, so our staffing presentation is made up by 4 broad areas of functional activity for the board and the public. That is the administrative staff, the elementary staff, the secondary staff, and our non-instructional staff. Our administrative staff makes up central office, our building level administrators, as well as our district-wide administrators. Our district-wide administrators are, of course, our directors. And for administrative staffing, you'll see no changes in this presentation with regard to full-time equivalent positions. Our elementary staffing projections, these are based on our March enrollments. Every year we do take a look at where we are in terms of class sizes throughout the district in March, and we use those as our projection for the following year. Our elementary guidelines are 25 students in grades K through 5. And I know the board is aware we have been well below that number for a number of years now. And the way the guidelines do work, or have worked in leaner budget times, is when all sections on a grade level reach that next number, so 26, is when we would split a class in terms of increasing full-time equivalent positions on that grade level. And then enrollment projections and these sections are reviewed throughout the rest of the school year and even into the summer months when we get a better handle on what kind of numbers we have at each grade level. So we take a look at South Haven Early Childhood Center first. And I'm going to, for the purpose of our new trustees, give you a little brief tutorial on what our charts look like. So on the top half of the chart, you see our current numbers. And then on the bottom half of the chart, under the section projections, you'll see what we are projecting our numbers to be, both in terms of number of students as well as sections. So looking at South Haven, and I'm going to go columns across now. So you'll see the grade on the left, the enrollment, the number of students, number of sections next, and then finally what we're projecting the average class size to be. So at South Haven this year, we have an SHECC, obviously South Haven Early Childhood Center. As you know, we have community-based organizations also delivering our pre-K program. So South Haven Early Childhood Center half-day program, we currently have 64 youngsters enrolled. We have 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. sections, and the average class size is 16 there. We have 1 full day with enrollment of 18. We have CBO in there with, well actually we have 3 CBOs. We have 1 at Head Start and 2 at South Haven. So that's why you see 3. The average class size is 18. And then our next CBO, we have a half-day program, and that is Bellport United Methodist Church. You'll see it started with an AM and a PM, and they early in the school year closed that PM. That's why you see it etched out. I left it that way because I wanted the board to see we're not changing what we had planned for this year, for next year. However, we are 1 less section this year simply by that closing. Okay, so then if you move down to projections, really pre-K, same as K, it's hard to project out what you will get. We are estimating that we will get what we have this year. So there is no change in South Haven Early Child Center in terms of projections. Moving on to Brookhaven, again, the table is very similar, only the difference is the columns. So again, you see grade, you see enrollment. Next, you will see general education sections. Next is bilingual ed, that's our dual language program and the number of classrooms that are associated with that. And then next you'll see integrated sections, that's our inclusion classes in the Brookhaven school. And then finally, average class sizes. So you'll see, and I'm not going to go through every single item and bore the board because you do have that, but I will reflect the changes. So you'll see currently there are 25 sections overall at Brookhaven, and we are projecting 1 less section next year at Brookhaven for 24 sections. And you'll see the class sizes, they went from 16, 17, 19, 19, 20, 23, 24 to all about the same. Now, Brookhaven's got a number of sections, so it is kind of easier to lose a section and not feel it as bad. And you'll see it when I move to the next school. When you reduce sections, for example, when you only have 4 or 3 sections of grade level, and you eliminate a section, you have about 20 kids to disperse among fewer sections. That's not the case here at Brookhaven. When you close a section, you have more sections to spread the numbers out. So it doesn't feel it as much. And that's the point I'm trying to make. But in any event, dual language continues, and we are projecting 1 less section at Brookhaven. Moving to Kramer Street, and here is a good example of, you'll see sections at 4, 5, 5, and 4, and then projected for next year 4, 4, 4, and 5. Kramer as well, we are projecting one LEX section there, and their average class size is anywhere from 17 to 21 in a class, and the projection is second and third grade about 21 next year in those classes. And they have 21, 22 this year. Vern Kritz, this year, 15 sections. You'll notice Vern Kritz does not have a bilingual education program. When we created the magnet school, students are able to, or families are able to choose to send their children there. I think we are averaging at about 6 families per school that take advantage of that in our other 2 elementary schools. There are also no integrated sections at Vern Kritz as well. Reduction there is from 15 to 14 sections. And again, average class size, highest at 21, and then the lowest at 15, 16. Frank P. Long, there is a reduction of 2 sections here. Average class size currently 22 to 24, with a total of 25 sections. And that average class size would continue to be the same with the reduction of 2 sections and only 23 sections at Frank P. Long next school year. You'll notice that there are bilingual sections at Frank P. This year was the first year we had the 4th grade program. That 4th grade moves to 5th grade, and then the old 3rd grade moves into the 4th grade. So there will be bilingual in both grades at Frank P. Long in intermediate school next year. This table gives us a summary of classroom teachers, just for the board's ease of look. Brookhaven, less 1, Kramer, less 1, Kritz, less 1, Frank P. Long, less 2, for an overall decrease of 5 full-time equivalent positions for the elementary classroom position. We also talked about integrated co-teachers and classrooms as we went through those slides. This is a summary of those sections, and we are projecting 2 less sections in this, and that is at Frank P. Long. So when you lose a teacher at Frank P. Long that's integrated co-teacher, or actually when a section closes for an integrated class, you actually have a 2-teacher savings because 2 teachers are assigned to an integrated co-teaching setting. In addition to general education and integrated co-teaching settings, we have our special class program teachers. These are sometimes referred to as self-contained settings. At Brookhaven, we have 1 staff member assigned, Kramer 3, Kritz 4, and Frank P. Long 5. And we are projecting a reduction of 1, and that is at Frank P. Long for next school year. In addition to our inclusion and our special program teaching staff, we have special education teachers assigned to resource programs, programs that are pulled out and it's not generally an in-class setting. We have a reduction slated at Frank P. Long of 0.3 of a position. So some of our new trustees will say, well, how do you get 0.3 of a position, right? So that's why I opened up by saying, when we look at staffing, we look at it in terms of full-time equivalent positions. Full-time equivalent, 1 person is 1.0, a third of that person is 0.3. Because we have needs throughout the district, generally a 0.3 may be matched with a 0.7 somewhere else, and that's when you have staff that are traveling between buildings to make up a full schedule. And then, of course, sometimes we do have staff members with less than a full schedule, and maybe half-time or 0.3, so to speak. So in addition to our general education and our special education staffing, we have other elementary teaching positions, and these are those. They're art, E&L, health, library, mathematics, music, physical education, reading. We have reading coaches, speech, visually impaired, social worker, psychologists, and a behavioral specialist. In terms of other elementary teaching position, we are currently projecting a 0.2 increase overall, and that is an E&L need. You know that we have seen an increase in E&L needs over the years. This year is no different. So when you look at elementary staffing projections overall, the 5 areas that I just shared with you, we have a 8.1 decrease overall in elementary staffing. Next, we take a look at secondary staffing, and these are also based on March projections. And again, we review these projections as we go throughout the school year and update them as warranted, particularly with secondary, because course requests are put in, and we need to finalize those requests based on how many students may select a course, and then we have guidelines with regard to whether or not that course will run, depending upon the enrollment of that course. So these are often changed throughout the school year and into the summer months. So when we take a look at Bellport Middle School is realizing a reduction overall of about 33 youngsters next year. This is really in line with the enrollment study that the board had done by Western Suffolk BOCES a couple of years ago. And you'll see as we move now to the high school, we are realizing or projecting an increase of 37. So as you just saw with the middle school, you will eventually start seeing with the high school. Our enrollment is going down as suggested and projected by that Western Suffolk BOCES study that we have done. So when you take a look at secondary staffing, we have it broken out on 2 tables here for you, beginning simply with the 6th grade and then all the subjects throughout. I'm not going to read through each of that, but on this first table, we are suggesting a 1.8 increase, 0.5 at the middle school and 1.3 at the high school. Those increases are at the social studies, and social studies increase is a result of bringing the capstone program in that we have talked about and presented with the board. The E&L is the other large increase that you see, and again, that is due to an increased need. We move on to the next table, and these are the other subjects that are aligned at both the middle school and the high school. And when you take all of the pieces of staffing throughout those subjects, you come up with a 1.1 decrease at the middle school and a 2.1 increase at the high school for an overall increase of 1.0 at the secondary. Taking a look at that in one table shot, and you will see a current staffing of 108 at the middle school and 131.4 at the high school, and a reduction of 1.1 and an increase of 2.1 for an overall increase of 1.0 at our secondary schools. So in addition to our certified staff, and I always get myself in trouble when I say that because our teaching assistants are also certified staff, and they lead this table. So in addition to our faculty teaching positions, we have these non-instructional staffing projections, teaching assistants, aides and monitors, clerical, buildings and grounds, responders, nurses, health aides, and a trainer and computer lab assistants. We are projecting a decrease of of 16 overall full-time equivalent positions here. These are mostly teaching assistants as a result of reduced class sizes that we talked about earlier, and responders also in terms of a reduced need, and quite frankly, trying to recognize the difficult budget season that we are in, and making some reductions there. So to summarize staffing, this is how all of those tables look like on one table in terms of full-time equivalent positions. And we have a 22.1 decrease in full-time equivalent positions. And these positions are reflected in the current budget presentation that we have prepared for the board. And I believe that's the end of the staffing summary. And before we move into expenses and revenues, I would like to address any questions that the board might have.
I have a comment. My concern is the number of social workers, psychologists, behavior specialists, and other professional staff like that, because I'm gonna tag on to what Ms. Aruda was talking about earlier. When we come back in September, I'm anticipating that there's gonna be a larger need for services like this. And seeing no change, I don't know that we've got any, do we have any room to bring them in? I know we've got the financial problem, but putting that aside, I think that we're gonna need more staff members who are social workers or psychologists or guidance.
Well, I mean, that is a good point. I think that we do have not only a very good staff when it comes to our mental health folks. I do think that our staffing numbers are well within able to support any need that we would have. And I'll leave it at that. Social workers, psychs, and what else? I'm sorry, social workers, psychologists, and
guidance.
Yeah, I think that we are pretty well staffed in those areas. Particularly, in many districts, you may see fewer social workers and more guidance, or vice versa. We here in South Country do have a nice staffing contingent in both areas, both social worker and guidance counselor. So I'm pretty confident that we have the full-time equivalent positions needed to get the job done, and I'm also very confident in terms of our folks that are doing that job. Ms. Aruda?
I'm going to refer to slide 9 with Vern Kritz specifically. The first grade level the class size is jumping up a great deal. Kritz is one of our sited schools. We are going from a current grade level of 15, 16, because they would be in kindergarten right now, to now then bumping up to 21. Currently, right now, our first grade does have a smaller class size at 14, 15, but that's a huge jump, especially for our school that is sited, and as we spoke about, knowing that our children will inevitably probably come in needing some additional academic resources under the situation that we're in right now. So I want to bring that to the board's point as well.
Okay. And so the board knows these numbers are projections. And while I display what is actual in terms of what we have now, that is not necessarily what we will have. And also, as those numbers become more definite, principals have the ability to be able to move teachers around to be able to address need. So say, for example, the kindergarten numbers do not come in as we are projecting. The principal would have the ability to move that teacher out into a larger grade level and be able to reduce those average class sizes at that grade level. So these are very preliminary, and that's basically where we are. But I certainly take that as a note with regard to a concern. Any other questions on staffing?
I have a question.
I'm sorry, I was reading. I wasn't looking. Go ahead, Mr. Trent.
You said, because of a reduced need, for responders, can you explain that?
Well, listen, I said two things, right? Reduced need in terms of the TAs, but also a reduction recognizing the difficult budget climate where we are in. You know, over the years, we have added responders in many of the areas, many of the buildings, and we don't believe that we need that many that we have been adding over these years, and are pretty confident that we will be able to operate just as well with that reduction.
So what would it look like per school? How many security guards would be in South Haven?
I can give you those numbers. I don't have them here with me, Mr. Trent, but I could certainly provide those for you, because we have to have that figured out.
Also, do you know by any chance the amount of savings it would be with these?
The number of respond, how much? 30? 30? 210? $210,000 for the 7 responders.
And how about the, what was it, 22 or 26 staff all together?
Sorry, the who?
All the staff together.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that number. Yeah, that's, everyone's at a different rate of pay. That's a difficult number to, I'd have to compile that for you.
And the elementary staff, are they staff that would be, like, are they retiring and just not replaced, or are they staff that would be laid off, or how does that work?
All but two. It's a combination. I think there may be 2 excess staff in there, but it's a combination of attrition and excess. But I believe under this plan, only 2 teachers may be excess. Is that accurate? 3 teachers.
2 retirees.
Yeah, 3 teachers would be excess under this plan. You're welcome. Any other questions on staffing?
I know that we are thinking possibly of some administrative retirements coming up, possibility. Are we looking to maybe cut down a little bit on our administrative staffing? A little bit?
If there is a retirement that comes forward, we will certainly reevaluate as we are doing with any other staff in terms of reassigning and reevaluating wherever we could.
I have a question.
Sure.
In terms of administrative staffing, there are no changes proposed. Are there no salary increases there?
I'm sorry. No. This has nothing to do with contractual obligations. This is only about the position, full-time equivalent position.
Okay.
Any other questions on staffing? Okay, bear with me so I can get through this to the end of this. And then I am going to ask Ms. Costa to begin, and I am going to wrap it up once I get You ready? You want, I can click it for, I'll click it for you.
Oh, just talk
Yeah.
from here?
Yeah, go right in the middle there.
Oh, there you
Yeah.
go.
You want me to, you guys want me to turn it around so you can see Christine?
No, it's okay.
She's social distancing, she's way in the back, so.
All right, everyone, here we are, state aid in a very uncertain time.
Can you hear, Ms.
Can you
Costa?
hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I
Okay.
can hear you.
So here we are, state aid in a very uncertain time, and Dr. Gianni's
Bringing it
clicking a
all
little
up.
fast. He's clicking
I was-
too fast.
Oh, you want me to go back?
Go back.
All right.
So here we are, click.
One more?
Yeah, I'll go like this when you have to click. Go forward, go forward. Okay, here we are, first column on your left. I thought we'd backtrack just to see where we are. There's been so many fluid changes since we've been speaking about the budget revenue and expenditures. So we'll back up and then we'll move forward. This is the 1920 revenues for the budget that we're in right now. This is where we ended the year and where we're operating in right now. We have 57 million at the bottom of that column, $125,005. That is the state aid that we have received this year, or we're scheduled to receive. And that's where we are last year. Okay, here we are at the governor's budget. And that's what we received that information back in January. And when we spoke at that time, that's at $58,376,530. At that time, we spent our time talking about how foundation aid, the first line there, how we had only received about 0.25% increase in foundation aid, and the rest of the increase was related completely to expense-based aids. Have to spend the money for us to receive the money the next year. But then in between January and today, everything changed. So the next column is the legislative budget. The legislature, by April 1st, is supposed to issue a budget. They did on April 2nd, very close. But the biggest change here, obviously, is related to the pandemic that has hit the country. So when we saw the state aid run, this is really exactly what it looked like. I tried to replicate it for you. Those are our state aid numbers, and you see at the bottom in blue and yellow, that is the pandemic adjustment, $991,000 reduction for us, with a federal CARES restoration of those dollars from the federal government. But the interesting thing to note is in that column that says legislative, every single item has stayed the same to our current 1920 budget. So our foundation aid has stayed the same, and the only changes that we have in our budget at this point in time in our state aid revenue numbers has to do with expense-based aids. And because they're legally obligated to pay us based on the legislation, that's the only change we're seeing. So if we move forward right now, the second column to your right is our best case scenario. We are hoping that the federal CARES restoration comes through, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And then the column on the right was hoping that we could have a conversation with the board to say that that was the worst case scenario, that we would not receive the federal CARES restoration money. But unfortunately, this was created last week. From last week to this week, there's been an update, and that is not the worst case scenario. We do not know the worst case scenario. We hope it would be written into the final state budget that that would be where we could build our worst case on, but it's not where we are. So right now, we had to reduce our state aid by $362,000 in what the board had seen in our last version of the budget. And we cannot say that at the worst case, we'd have to take another $991,000 out of that. And why is that? So what happened when the final legislation passed is it created more questions than answers. So here's what we do know since then on the next slide. On the next slide, so what's being said, I took summary of one person, Bob Lowry, he's the Deputy Director of Advocacy, Research, and Communication from NISCUS, and what he has said is, and these questions have been answered in the legislative budget that was passed, is there a floor to the potential reductions? And all boards wanted to know that answer because they want to be able to plan. And the answer is no. There is no set floor, and this is his exact answer. Last week we had heard there might be a floor, but the enacted budget did not provide for that. So We are in uncharted territories. And then the next question is, is there a specific way that reductions would be applied? Will it be a flat percentage applied to all districts? Will it be based on your Title I, funding or some other formula for a pandemic reduction? And of course, the answer that Bob gave, because there was nothing in the legislation, it said, we do not know. And the budget language basically says they can make a reduction. It has to be reasonable, but it does not define how it has to be created. The current $991,000 reduction that we do see is related on the Title I free and reduced lunch calculations that drive a lot of budget numbers. So that 990 is based on the Title I free and reduced numbers that we see, but it doesn't have to be that way going forward. So the last piece that we do know is that I know John spoke about it recently, just recently. In the legislation, there's 3 budget review periods. The first one is from April 1st to April 30th. And we're hopeful to get a little more information on April 30th. The second review period is May 1st to June 30th, where we could get further information. And the third review period in legislation is July 1st to December 31st. So by December 31st, we should have whatever the state's going to, happen to, public education. We will know that by December 31st definitively. That was written into the final budget for the state. So we all are waiting with bated breath on April 30th as to what they might say. And just as a history as to the legislation, the federal restoration, like what happened in the GEA time, which was 2008, that we had the, that reduction. And just for history's sake, it took 11 years for the last district to be restored, the GEA, that adjustment that happened mid-year. So that took 11 years of restoration for districts. But here, the interesting piece is the federal government wrote into the legislation a maintenance of effort clause, which we were all cheering for slightly to say, great, the state has to maintain their effort to schools to get any federal money. But then when you dug deeper, you read further, you realized that the federal government wrote into the legislation a waiver application. So you could ask to be waived from your maintenance of effort. So that's what really adds the uncertainty to our state aid numbers, is that there is a way for them not to maintain their effort and cut money to school districts. And that's really where we are now.
So what does that look like in terms of now our expenses? Okay, we have listed our expenses, or at least our projected expenses for you here. These numbers, as I mentioned earlier, do reflect the 22.1 staffing reduction. And of course, we are still looking at items as we move through this process, and we'll make further recommendations with regard to staffing and other items to the board as we move forward. I do want to highlight, actually it is highlighted there in red, and that is transportation. This new budget, and reason why you see it jump from, I believe, 8 to 10, this new presentation is a result of the RFP coming in on our small buses, which the board has not approved yet. However, the low RFP is a $1.7 million increase for our small buses. So this budget, or at least this projected plan, does have that in there, and that would be year 1 of a 5-year increase. And then, as the board recalls, last year we accepted an RFP from a contract provider for our large buses. We are in year 2 of a 5-year deal with them, and the large buses call for a $278,000 increase, which is set. Yes, go ahead.
A quick question on that. What's the total, you're saying it's small buses is a $1.7 million increase. What's the total expense for the small buses?
The total is, go ahead.
$5 million, approximately, $5 million.
And how many buses is that?
You know how many
I
buses?
mean, how many routes? Give me a guesstimate.
It's hard to say by route, because the small buses do a lot of small stops and long distance stops. Those are your ones that you're bringing people out out of the district or well beyond.
Yeah, no,
It's not
but I
a,
mean,
it's not a route.
can you ballpark it? We talking 15, we talking 20, we talking 5?
It's
No,
close
I
to
think
50.
we're well
It's
up.
close to 50, but I have to look.
Yeah, Ms. Costa believes it's close to 50 buses.
50 buses. I guess where I'm going is there was a time many years ago where we did that, we own the buses and we employ drivers, right? And there was resistance to going back to that due to the Affordable Care Act. And it just seems like for $5 million, it's worth kicking the tires on doing that again. Understanding there would be an expense to buses and things like that, but I mean, with such a big budget line of $5 million, why wouldn't we look into that?
Yeah. Well, we could, but that's certainly, it is a huge startup cost.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is, but something tells me there's gonna be a lot of buses for sale soon. I mean, you know, I mean, like, it's really kind of, at this point, and even if it doesn't happen next year, but to sit here every couple of years and keep putting out these RFPs and the costs keep going up, and not to mention, when we do go out for RFPs, you know, the results might be a little better if they know that we have an option of going back to doing it ourselves. I mean, the small buses are starting to price themselves out of the market. So just, and I know it can't happen fast, but it's just something I think we need to really start kicking the tires on.
Okay. So when we take a look at our revenues, this is really a summary of what Ms. Costa just reviewed with you. When you take a look at our state aid, you're looking at $889,000, and then of course the unknown with regard to the pandemic adjustment and whether or not the Federal CARES Restoration Act is going to support that. So our financial challenges, where are our budget drivers, right? So our drivers are contractual obligations that are about 1.19 million, transportation totaling 2.27 million, benefits 1.8, and BOCES at 1.2 million. Revenue limitations, as we've talked about, tax cap levy limit of 2.11% or 1.3 million. Basically no foundation aid funding. We don't know where we are with this pandemic adjustment and the Federal CARES Act. And of course, will there be mid-year adjustments? We need to plan for the worst and hope for the best, so to speak, when it comes to the budget this year because of the unknown. So our financial challenges, when you take a look at our expenses and revenues on one table, this is how they look. Now again, I'll remind the board that in the past, we've designated a fund balance of 3.9 million. We have given money back to the community through our reserves, 2 reserves in the past 2 years, and that is our workers' comp and our ERS reserve, $200,000 each for $400,000, and the debt service transfer, that was a 5-year plan, and I think this year is the 5th, or is it? This is the last year of that $600,000. So taking a look at the budget as proposed, without those reserves or designated fund balance, you are looking at a $10 million gap. So what's next? We still need to look at staffing further in terms of enrollment projections and finding efficiencies wherever we may be. I'm certainly interested in hearing the board's response to what is projected at this point. Further review our current expenses and requests with our budget managers. We have been doing that. It's ongoing. And we have made reductions as a result of that. The board, of course, needs to determine whether or not they want to make additional cuts, additional reserve allocations, or stay within the tax levy cap. And then finally, actually I did the last one first in terms of what you want to do in terms of our reserves and our fund balance. skip that, and I'm gonna leave it at that for some comments and guidance from the board moving forward.
I think it's hard to give you good feedback right now when we know that April 29, April 30th, there might be some more information made available to us that could give us a better picture of where we stand with regard to the state aid and also the federal reimbursement.
I perfectly understand that. We do, the next item is to look at the calendar. I don't know how many of you looked ahead. I'm recommending that we make an adjustment to our calendar to allow us to do a little bit more meeting as a result of the situation we're in. So the board will have that opportunity to be able to act as we move, so to speak, and get more information. Are there any other comments or thoughts?
Just one comment or thought, and anybody who knows me, listen to me talk about the budget, I've long been a proponent for not exceeding the levy cap. But if we can do what we can and we can go as low as we can, this may be an opportunity for us to partner with our stakeholders to say, you know, we're in a bind here, we may have to, and I don't know that that's possible, but I'd like to see what that might look like if it's not too far over. I don't want to be a glutton and just, you know, say we need all of this and we're not going to make cuts, but it certainly is a conversation we should have with the community, so to speak, and say, hey, listen, you know, what would you rather have? Higher class size, reduced services, or, you know, do you think you'd support a one-time breach of the tax levy cap? And all that, well, really depends on voting and how that's going to go, if it goes down and when the revote will be. There's a lot to risk there, but I do think it's something we might want to start talking about and maybe soliciting feedback from the community. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's the other unknown is when the vote will be.
Yep.
And what it'll look like.
Yeah.
With that being said, and I agree with you, Chris, because I don't want to have to lose anything. That's definitely something we'd have to have long conversations about. Trying to pierce the cap right now while a lot of people have lost their jobs might be a very challenging situation to even bring up. But I'm not saying that we shouldn't have these conversations, but keeping in mind that a good amount of people right now are not working and not getting a paycheck, might be extremely challenging during these times. So that's just food for thought.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's going to be tough, but I just think and before we can even entertain it, we really got to make sure that we have a responsible budget. I mean, like that means almost like zero increases. There's a lot that really needs to get thought, you know, into that, go into that conversation. But
and I think to Ann's point, after the 29th, I am jumping the gun a little bit, but I do notice that our next meeting would be the 29th. That's what you're looking at. So I think we should have some discussions about maybe moving away from the Wednesday and going maybe a day or two after, because if information is coming in on the 29th, I don't want to meet on the 29th and not have the information and then have to wait until the 13th. But again, I'm jumping ahead a little bit to the next item, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about that next. Mr.
Couple of
Santa?
questions. In addition to the designated fund balance, where at some point we'll decide how much we take from there, at this current time, are there any other reserves that we could tap? We've done it before.
Yeah, we are exploring that. TRS is probably our largest, but there's uncertainty there as well. We're taking a look at whether or not we want to, or that the administration wants to recommend to the board, whether or not we ask the community to reallocate the capital reserve back into the reserves to allow for more money in the reserves to give back to the public. rather than doing capital work, but to offset the increases that we currently have. That would be an area that we could look at. But then again, the capital reserve is something that you would need to ask the voters to reallocate.
Yeah.
And what was the dollar figure on that?
2.3 million about, maybe a little greater by the end of the year, but not too significant more. And then my recommendation would be to come up with a plan on how to disperse that over time, so it's not a burden on your next budget in terms of finding the efficiencies to support it, because you're talking about revenue, right? It's not going to just keep coming. You have to plan for it not being there any longer.
Perhaps it could be used to offset the loss in aid.
Yeah, right, exactly. That could be perfect. If the federal CARES does not come through, then we have that as a contingency plan to take care of it. Yes, that's a good point. Okay, anything else on that? Okay, then I will move to.
You know what, Dr. Gianni, one other thing.
Sure.
If we could get the updated numbers on, what we do currently have in our designated fund balance.
Okay. You want the reserves, all the reserves,
Yeah,
right? Okay.
yeah. I know we like to take out less rather than more, but this might be the rainy day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. This is the year to go deeper than normal. I'm worried about the next couple of years. I don't want to do it every year, but this is the rainy day.
Well, and my concern also is that the figures we're dealing with just look at a reduction from the state in the first quarter, and we don't know if the state will reduce us even further in the second, third, and fourth quarter of next year.
Correct.
So I would be uncomfortable using all of our reserves to offset the first quarter reduction and having nothing left to get us through the remaining 3 quarters of the year.
You wouldn't be hearing that recommendation coming from me to exhaust.
No, but I just wanted to highlight it because for us to keep it in mind, and then for people that are listening to our board meeting, to have them become a little bit aware of some of the challenges that are being dealt with by administration in making a proposed budget for us, and in terms of the school board itself voting to approve one.
Correct. Okay, this slide is not good because we're going to talk about that. Matt, you can pull that down, however you. Wow, Matt is good. Our technician is excellent. He's able to change the slides from a distance. Okay, the last item for discussion is the 2019-20 board meeting schedule. So as the board knows, in light of the COVID pandemic, the uncertainty of the state budget, and the lack of guidance regarding when our budget vote and election will be held, I am recommending a slight change in the board meeting schedule for the board's consideration this evening. And that is, I am proposing we add 2 business meetings on April 29th and May 13th, and move our May 20th meeting to the 27th. And we simply postpone our budget hearing and our budget vote election until we see some further guidance from the state. What this recommendation or suggestion does is basically put us on an every other week schedule. So every 2 weeks the board would be meeting. I hear Ms. Arruda's concern or suggestion that the 29th may be too soon with the the April 30th date, but that date, as I recall reading, was a range, and I'm suspecting that we're probably gonna know on the 29th what's coming out on the 30th. I could be wrong, but still, we do have 2 additional meetings beyond that. But I offer that for the board's discussion and consideration. It really is no matter to me. I just think every week is a little problematic in terms of getting things done.
I think that the idea of every other week having a meeting is good, because I think we need to follow up closely on what is coming out of Albany or even on the federal level. So, but if you're going to 2 weeks from now, the 29th is when we earliest would get any word, and maybe you wouldn't have time to digest the information. So I'm wondering if that week, maybe it should be our meeting on the 30th or even the 1st.
You mean move it off a Wednesday and go to Thursday or so?
Yes.
Or maybe the following Monday. I don't know, whatever you guys, in administration feel like you'll have enough time to be able to digest
Yeah,
the
that's
information.
that's
I'm
the
open
thing.
to, a day, a Thursday or a Monday.
Couple of days will not help me. And listen, in 2 weeks, I plan to have a different budget for you to look at. And more efficiencies and further reductions. I don't think we should just bank on hearing from the state. And besides, by the 29th, we may have heard more in terms of an extended closure, which might also push the governor's hand in terms of giving some direction with regard to our transportation questions and all of our other questions. So I'm really confident I can give you something different on the 29th regardless. And I think we will know more. We might not see the executive order with the details, but I think there will be more information that will shed some light on the budget by the 29th.
If you feel confident that you can provide some information on the 29th, I'm open to the 29th. I just want to be able to give you ample time to formulate everything so that we are meeting and having something to go on.
Yeah, and listen, if nothing comes out on the 29th, if the board's amenable, we could just move the 13th to the 6th, right? Which would give me a week to scramble with any new information that we have.
The 13th to the 6th, or the 29th to the 6th?
No, I would stick to the 29th, and if the new information I will have a new budget for you on the 29th. I guarantee you that.
I can confirm what you're saying. Okay.
I'm just saying, if we don't know from the state, we could adjust our calendar again and get it to you on an earlier date.
Why don't we have a consensus that we do need to have more meetings between now and the end of the regular school year than we'd anticipated? And that the next meeting would be on the 29th. And we could go ahead and set the time now instead of doing it by email. Is it 3:30 meeting time okay with everybody?
We can't make that determination, Ann, because we don't know what's happening in terms of schooling. So we can't make that determination.
On the 29th?
We can't make that determination. I'm not comfortable making that determination yet until we have more information with schooling.
I'm sorry, with what? Our?
I think school's closed through the.
Talking about formulating timing for the upcoming meetings.
Right.
So I can't say that I can meet at 3:30 on the 29th and put that down. If my son are going in on the 30th, I may be in my building on the 29th. I can't say that I can meet at 3:30.
Oh, right, because the extension
I
only,
see.
So
right.
we have moving forward in terms of how long the duration of the school will be. it would be hard for me to just.
Well, how about this, Dr. Gianni, since you're promising us a revised budget, could you do that a day earlier and we could meet on the 28th?
Throwing me a curveball. If that is what the board's pleasure is, I can do that, but I want to look at 28.
I make a suggestion, why don't we just schedule it, and if school closure isn't extended, then we talk about moving the time of the meeting.
Well, why don't we
Just
say?
schedule it, I listen, this is your recommendation, so why don't we just schedule it as you recommend, and if we need to make an adjustment, we can make an adjustment. We've been doing it the whole way. If schools, listen, if schools closure is gonna get extended, which it likely will, we're probably gonna know that long before this meeting, so.
Yes.
To sit here and go round and round about it, just do it, and we'll deal with it as it comes up. That would be my suggestion.
I would pose it this way, if school is closed, is 3:30 okay?
Yes.
Okay, so if school remains extended, we'll stick with today's time. And if it is not, we will go to our 6:15, whatever that we had, okay?
Well, what about everybody else? Is that okay? I mean, I'm speaking on my behalf, but I haven't heard.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think everyone's got same.
Earlier is better for me. I mean, I was hoping for mornings, but I know some of us are still working, so it's not hard. So whatever, the timing doesn't matter. For me.
Okay, so, do you want to move forward with what I'm recommended, or do you just want to do the 29th, Dan? I mean, I'm fine with anything.
I was just looking to avoid back and forth emails.
No, I mean the rest of them, though, the rest of the meeting,
That's
so.
what I mean.
Okay,
What I mean is that, when there's enough uncertainty out there, and Melissa has the point that if school is reopened, then it's one situation, and if it's not reopened, it's another. So if we meet on the 29th, or, we could then set our schedule. We would know more. Wouldn't that take care of Melissa's problem?
well, Melissa's concerned that if school's open, 3:30 is
Right.
open, I think. And we'll just adjust the time, when that becomes clear. I don't think the governor's gonna wait to that last week to make a call. I think he's gonna make the call next week, with regard to extension. So we'll have plenty of time to decide on the time. But-
Okay, so let's narrow down what's being proposed. And that would be to have a business meeting on April 29th, another one on May 13th, and then another one on May 27th?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct, and then, of course, we need to postpone the hearing on the 6th, and of course, the election on the 19th, and we'd be deleting the May 20th, or really moving the May 20th to the 27th. So it's really an addition of 2 meetings, and we'll be meeting every other week,
okay.
okay?
That sounds good to me. I think we need to see if the rest of the board is nodding yes. Okay, Jack is.
Well, actually, you need a motion.
We need a motion. Okay, who wants to make the motion? Jack? And seconded by Mr. Trent. He had his hand up before yours, Mr. Santa.
Okay.
Okay, any discussion or questions? Okay, then all in favor? I see all hands are up, so that's unanimously approved, Dr. Gianni.
Okay, and we'll get that schedule out to you tomorrow, and we'll adjust the website as well, so the public knows as well. And the time will be to be announced. Okay, and I believe, now we move, okay, it's not one of our regular ones. Are we ready to move into my consent items?
I believe we are.
Okay.
We're down to G, board consent.
Can we omnibus the last few, sections, or unless somebody thinks there's gonna be, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot there.
No, there's not.
G, H, and I. Is that what you're asking, Mr. Cheney?
Right. GHI. Brenda, it's got the closing remarks. I mean, if nobody objects, we can be done a little quicker.
I don't object, I just have a couple questions, or 2 questions.
Okay,
That would be for the motion, right? You can ask
No,
the
we're
question on any
spending more
question.
time deciding to do this than it would have taken to do the motions. Okay, but we're gonna do, item G1. I need a motion to approve that. Somebody, Mr. Trent and Ms. DeSanto is second. Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in, oh, was your hand up for a question, Ms. Aruda? Okay, all right, all in favor of consenting to that item, please raise your hand. I see all hands raised, so that is agreed to. Item H, 1 through 3. Is there a motion to approve that? Mr. Nix, the second. Ms. DeSanto, questions or discussion? None? All in favor?
Yes.
I think I see all hands, so it's unanimously approved. And then I, a motion to approve I 1 through 5. Mr. Nix, and a second by Ms. DeSanto. Questions or discussion? Mr. Trent.
In regards to the item 3, and this one, are our guys gonna be installing the fence, or are we paying someone else to do that?
I'm sorry, I,
Fence.
three.
The fence, but, where they be crits, I believe.
Residential fence.
The buildings grounds, which one's that?
It's a transfer.
It's the fence, Dr. Jim, it's already up.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a transfer to cover the cost of the Crit's fence.
Yeah, but who's gonna be doing the work?
Oh, that's residential, right? Residential's doing it. It's just about up, I believe.
It's done, yeah.
Yeah, I know they came in today with the mesh, I believe.
Excellent. And the number 5, that budget transfer, can you explain that to me a little bit?
The transfers on number 5,
Yeah.
do you have those, Ms. Costa?
Yes. That is a transfer to cover the estimated cost for the end of the year for all facilities, responders, and building and ground needs.
I'm sorry, I'm not getting that. Can you
I'm
speak a little bit?
gonna try to repeat it.
I want to come closer.
Yeah.
It's an analysis of all of the responder, building and grounds, and facility needs to the end of the year. So the right-hand side of that transfer covers all of those needs, and the left-hand side covers other codes within facilities that cover those expenses. It's somewhat routine every year. As you build the budget, it's based on estimates, and as the year comes to a close, you literally can say where your needs are. For instance, we had extra needs in lead testing and extra needs in certain places, and now this takes us through the end of the year to cover a lot of those costs. It's moving money within budget codes.
Did that
Does that help?
answer your question?
Yeah, it was just because I'm looking at the codes and I don't know what the codes mean. And there's large sums of money that I wanted to know where it was going. That was all.
Okay. So we had the motion and it was seconded and your questions were answered. So all in favor of consenting to items I 1 through 5, raise hands, please. And again, it's unanimous. So if there are any closing remarks by anybody, now is the time. Mr. Pacini.
All right, I did just want to bring up that one budget transfer that Mr. Trippman brought up, and it's just, it's everybody to understand how unfortunate it is that the district had to go spend over $80,000 because 3 kids in the community can't keep their ATVs off the field and keep destroying our property. And not to mention the hard work of the volunteers of the Buffalo Little League who maintain the baseball fields. So it's unfortunate, it really does, and it's a shame, but this is our, you know, a couple of members of our community, a couple of kids who just can't do the right thing, so it's unfortunate, but I appreciate the district addressing it.
Yeah, I saw quads driving away last night. Not gonna be able to get in tonight.
Good.
Mr. Trent, did you have a comment?
No.
No, okay. Any other trustees with comments? Again, thank you. Be well, be safe.
Be well, we'll see you on the
Yeah, we
29th.
have to make a motion, no?
Yeah,
We
we
got-
are.
we got-
Yeah,
make
you
a
get
motion.
to do that.
We're a little hasty
You
there.
get to do that.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, who's gonna second?
I'll send it immediately, guys.
Ms. Aruda. All in favor of adjourning? It's
Thank you,
unanimous.
everybody, have a good night.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Bye.